Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this really easy, serene little landscape, or seascape rather, and you can use watercolors. I'm going to use my Inktense blocks because that's what I did with, or pans, because that's what I did this postcard with. I painted this on an Arteza postcard, but you can use whatever watercolor paper you have, and you can use whatever watercolors you have. It could even be your kids' watercolors, because you don't need really strong colors for this. Basically, I was just playing around to see how soft I could get these colors, which kind of come out naturally like this, on a painting. So use whatever you have. I'm just going to use the same paint that I painted that demo with, just so that I would, just to keep it consistent. So this was a request, and I figured, oh, why not? I'm batching up a bunch of projects today, so I figured that would be fun. That would be fun to paint that. I'm going to start by wetting the paper. Whenever you want soft blended colors, you want to wet the paper. This is going to be a really easy project, so if you want something to relax with, or maybe you're new and you just want to just learn a few things. So I'm going to assume that you're new and you want to learn a few things. You can mute me and speed me up with a little gear button on the player if you know you don't want to hear about it. Alright, so you want to get a nice coating of water, and I've got a cat hair in here because I have cats. So I'm just going to brush that off to the side. Never pick at it with your fingernail. If you see a piece of dust or something in your water, don't pick at it, because if you do, your fingernails are probably going to scratch the surface and you won't see it right away, but then when you go to paint a wash over it, you're going to see these dark little scratches. Sometimes we do that on purpose. We'll use the end of our brush and we'll scrape onto the paper and then paint over it, and we'll get all these really nice grasses and stuff. But if you're not expecting it, it can be kind of a pain. All right, so now I'm going to take some turquoise, but I'm not going to go right onto my paper because it's going to be way too bright. I'm going to put it on my palette, and I'm going to add water. I'm going to dilute it down, make sure it's nice and soft. Okay? I'm going to clean my brush off, and then I'm going to grab some, I think I'm going to go with this, let's see, do I have a cerulean? I have a mid ultramarine. Let's do that. This is a really pretty color. I only know of it in Derwent products. It's such a lovely, not quite ultramarine, it's more like a periwinkle, but see how this blue looks more green and that blue looks like it could be more like purple? They're just different blues. Okay, now what I want to look on my paper for is I want it to not be shiny. I want it to just kind of be like satin. You know, if you're thinking of when you go pick out paint for your walls, you can get gloss, you can get semi-gloss, you can get satin, you can get eggshell or matte. So you want that satin kind of effect, satin to semi-gloss. You don't want it really shiny. And I'm going to grab some of this really diluted turquoise. I'm going to add it right up to the top. Now, this is a little bit darker than what I have on my paper there, because I know it's going to fade a little bit as it dries. Watercolor does that. Doesn't matter the brand, it'll shift a little bit. So I want it a little bit darker than how I have it on the postcard. Okay? And now I'm just going to rinse my brush. I'm going to blot it because I don't want extra water. And I'm going to pick up some of that other blue. Going to add it in from the other side, and I'm just going to kind of coax them together a little bit. Now there is another cat hair. My goodness. Tally likes to prowl around the basement. If I leave my my studio door open, she comes in here. Now the reason I wanted to shift the turquoise to that more ultramarine looking blue is because I want to bring in some yellows, and if I have this ultramarine blue, which looks kind of more like purple, if I have yellow next to it, it's not going to go green, because they're not close to each other on the color wheel, whereas that turquoise is kind of close to green. If I put yellow near that, it's going to go green. So now I'm going to get some of this warm yellow, and I'm using the warmer yellow, not the cooler yellow, because, again, I don't want it to go green. Now see how pastel I'm making these colors in my palette. I don't want this full strength because it's really strong. Now if you're using a regular watercolor, you may not have this issue. You might be, well, it's just about right off the pan, and you don't need to really dilute it that much. If you're using your kids' watercolors, you probably don't need to dilute it at all. But if you're using an artist grade watercolor, or if you're using Inktense, which is what I have here, it's going to be brighter than you typically want it. And I'm just going to work that in there. Also, I'm using cotton paper, and that is going to allow my surface to stay wet as I'm working, so I don't have to fight it drying out on me. Okay, so can you see I've just got some very soft colors here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some red. I'm going to take this cherry red. I can add it over where I have the yellow. Now look how strong that is. I need to add a little more water to that and dilute it down. Maybe a little bit more of that cherry red. Was that the color? I think that was the color I was using. And if my brush feels a little too juicy, I just blot it on a paper towel and it takes out the extra moisture. And then I am just going to kind of figure out where I want my horizon line, and I'm just going to very gently coax it in. Now I probably should have drawn a little line on there just to get the, be sure I had it in the right place, but this is just a demo. I'm pretty sure. It's in my sketchbook. I'm pretty sure it'll be close enough. And then I'm also going to add some of this color down here in the water. Now I want my sunset to be right about there. I might have waited too long to blot here, but I'm going to take either a tissue or a Q-tip. You can use either one, like a paper towel, I mean by tissue, or a Q-tip. I find it works better than like a rag, and I'm just going to blot. Yep, I can lift it up. That's good. I'm going to blot where I want that sun to be and remove that pigment. And there, that works good. Watch your fingernails again. You don't want to scratch up your paper. Alright, then, now if you want to switch to a smaller brush, go right ahead. I'm just using this one because I don't know, I like to use a big brush. Now I'm going to pick up some of that turquoise. Okay, but this time it's not going to be quite so watery. I don't care if it's a little brighter now. I want a little more stronger color because I'm going to be in the water, and the water oftentimes is a little darker. And I'm going to just move I got to move this up to an angle so I got to look kind of straight on it to make sure I'm not going to make it tippy. And I am just going to put this horizon line down, and I'm going to start working my brush back and forth on the chisel edge to give it kind of a ripply effect. A little in there. This is how we get that really soft look, by having the paper wet, having our colors diluted. Now I'm going to grab that mid ultramarine again, a little bit stronger than what I had in the sky. And I'm going to bring this over here where I have reds and yellows, so I don't end up with green. I'm going to end up with more pure colors. Then I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to go back in with some of that beautiful red. Not super strong, but brighter than I had in the sky. And I'm just going to carry on that horizon. Get some of that color in the water. If you've ever tried to paint like a sunrise or a sunset or sunrise as it's happening, you know you have to move fast because things change so quickly. Now I could even go a little bit darker, and you can also even wait to see, like, as your paper dries, if you want it a little bit darker. But I know I want it a little darker, so I'm going to go in right now. And I'm actually using the corner of my brush, so feel free to go in with a smaller brush if you want. A little more yellow. Let's see, I need a clean spot. I think that's pretty clean. Just wanted to make sure I didn't have too much. See, that's way too much. That's what I wanted to avoid. But I was running out of room, so I'm just going to very gently tone down that yellow. Work it into my brush a little bit so I don't have so much on the tip. There, just intensify that color. Alright, now I'm going to take a round brush because I want to do some skies, and the flat's not going to give me puffy clouds. So I'll just grab this one here. And we'll start off with some of that red, which maybe seem kind of weird to do clouds in red, but we're going to start with some of that red. And hopefully my sky is wet enough. A little bit of that ultramarine blue in there. And we're going to put some clouds in that sky. Red sky in morning, sailor take warning. Gonna add some yellow towards the bottom. I need like another mixing area. And put some little clouds over here. Clouds closer to the horizon you can make smaller, and it'll give you a sense of scale. I want to mix up some nice purple ones. I'll blot my brush off. I have a little too much water in there, I think. Now see, look how much dark. That's not even a real dark color, but in comparison it looks really dark. And I want those purple shadows on the top of the clouds because the sun is below them. So the golden colors reflected up from the sun are going to be at the bottom of the clouds. Have a lot of fun with this. You don't want to put the yellow and the purple right next to each other or they will go muddy. Now, if you're a beginner, I would recommend a palette with fewer colors because you can get, even I was just getting confused there. It's like, what red did I get? You want to make sure you don't get too confused by having too many colors on your palette. A little bit of that red in those clouds. I think that's real pretty. I love to add it when the clouds are still wet. If anything looks too harsh, you can go ahead and you can soften it out. And cotton paper is very forgiving because of that. Now if you want to get some of those purples in the water, why wouldn't you? They're pretty. Just make sure when you go in and you put them in the water, you are, they're kind of below where you've had your clouds. You might even want to apply them and then kind of like blend them a little bit because they can look really too strong very easily. So with this, you're really slowly building up your color. Like if you want some more turquoise, maybe you're saying, oh, I wish I had more turquoise in there. I don't feel like I got that color as represented. You can go in and you can put that in there. I just love these pretty tropical colors. Probably because it's like March in Maine and I'm like, oh, I want to go to the beach. Actually, we get some really pretty sunsets in the winter in Maine. I think it's because maybe all the snow reflecting. I don't know. We just get really pretty sunsets. I feel like the horizon line's going up a little too far on that side, but I don't know if I can. Oh, maybe I can correct it. That might be all right. Just blend it out a little bit so it's not so so it doesn't look so off. So we're not using a lot of color here. Just taking that ultramarine color. I feel like I want a little bit more of that in there too. That's really all there is to it. Let me give this a real quick blast with my heat tool so I can pull up the tape and then you can see how it looks with the white border. Now if your white does not look bright enough to you, if you're using the Inktense, you can use the white Inktense pan because that's very opaque. You could use a white paint pen. You could even use an electric eraser and try to sand off that top layer of your paper. That's up to you. I think it stands out enough, but I will leave that up to you and your judgment because it's your painting. You could add birds, you could add anything else you want in this, but I'm just going to leave it as is because the request was basically to repeat the demo that I had. Because I just do a bunch of little practices when I am testing out a new paint set. So I was just showing that in the review and I had a viewer that wanted to see that. So there you have it. I hope this encourages you to play with your watercolors. They shouldn't be intimidating or scary. They should really bring a sense of joy, and I hope that you give them a try. Now I could go in and make the horizon line a little bit darker like I did here. Maybe I will, now that I'm seeing that without the tape. I'm seeing that, maybe we need a little bit more definition. Is that brush clean? Well, let me try to clean that up a little bit more. Just use this little flat. I think that'll work pretty well. I just don't want to have too much water. See, getting confused. 24 colors here, and I get confused with how many I have. I wish I drew a line before I started. So I do have to be careful when I'm going in here. That almost seems too dark. Just to give it a little bit of a little bit more color at the horizon. I can do the same with the teal. I like to do this stuff before I take the tape off though, so I don't risk getting into my borders. But this is just sketchbook, so I'm not too worried about it. Oh, there we go. I like that. Just a little bit of adjustment afterwards, but there you have it. I hope you found that useful. I hope you give it a try, and please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this lesson. I do have a watercolor landscape workshop. If you'd like to check it out, I'll link it down below over on my Teachable School. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.